To cure his wife's cancer, Matthew has taken help from a dark creature. But this creature has made his life hell. The movie starts with Matthew and Claire's love story, beginning with their mutual passion for music. They spent countless hours composing songs, performing together, and dreaming of a future filled with harmony. Their bond was unbreakable, and their love for each other was evident in every note they played. However, their perfect life took a dark turn when Claire began to feel unwell. After several tests, doctors confirmed their worst fears. Claire had an aggressive form of cancer that had already spread throughout her body. Despite the grim prognosis, Matthew refused to give up. He devoted himself to finding a cure, exploring every possible option. He spent sleepless nights researching experimental treatments, consulting specialists, and praying for a miracle. Claire, on the other hand, accepted her fate with grace and courage. She stopped her treatment, choosing to spend her remaining days in peace rather than enduring painful procedures that offered little hope. One morning, Matthew woke up from a terrifying nightmare. Shaken and filled with dread, he went downstairs to fetch a parcel he had received. This parcel was no ordinary delivery. It contained an ancient relic he had found during his desperate search for a cure. This relic, a mysterious bag, was said to possess magical healing powers. Determined to save Claire, Matthew decided to use it, hoping it would be the miracle they needed. In their lives, two other significant people played crucial roles. The first was Gwen, a compassionate nurse who regularly visited to check on Claire's condition. Gwen had become more than just a nurse. She was a friend and a source of comfort for both Matthew and Claire. The second person was Harold, Matthew's cousin. Harold spent a lot of time at their house, offering emotional support and helping Matthew cope with the overwhelming stress. Claire, aware of her worsening condition, had resigned herself to the inevitable. She knew she was not going to get better and had stopped her treatment. However, Matthew convinced her to let Gwen take a blood sample one last time. Matthew had a secret plan. He asked Harold to distract Gwen while he stole the blood sample. Harold, unaware of the real reason behind this, agreed to help. Their plan worked, and Matthew obtained Claire's blood without Gwen noticing. When Harold asked why he needed the blood, Matthew vaguely mentioned finding another way to cure Claire. That evening, Matthew went to a bar he frequented. The bartender, Lily, was a friend of his. Through their conversations, we learned that Lily's mother had Alzheimer's disease, and Lily was struggling to care for her. At the bar, Matthew met a mysterious man named E.L. E.L. had promised Matthew a way to cure his wife without any money involved. Instead, it required using the ancient relic, the bag. E.L. taught Matthew a ritual that he needed to perform with the relic. He warned Matthew that the ritual would be challenging and strange things might happen, but in the end, Claire would be cured. Matthew, desperate and hopeful, agreed. The ritual was simple but eerie. Matthew had to keep the bag in a secluded place in his house, light a candle, and put Claire's blood into the bag. Then, he had to make a wish for Claire's recovery and immediately leave the room without looking back or speaking to the bag. E.L. warned him that if he broke any of these rules, there would be dire consequences. Matthew followed L's instructions, placing the bag in the basement and performing the ritual. However, he accidentally left his lighter in the room and had to go back to get it, breaking the rule of not returning. As he returned to the room, he saw the bag shaking, and an ominous feeling washed over him. The ritual had been completed, but Matthew didn't realize the mistake he had made. The next day, Harold visited Matthew. They spent time in the basement, where Matthew had set up a studio for Claire as a surprise. Suddenly, Matthew heard Claire's voice calling him. Rushing to her room, he found her sleeping peacefully. He brushed it off as his imagination, but soon, he began hearing a woman's voice repeatedly on a device in the basement. It sounded like Claire saying that it should have been Matthew who got cancer, not her. This angered Matthew, but when he confronted Claire, she was asleep. After this, he saw terrifying visions of a woman with black marks on her hands, similar to the marks he had seen on Claire. Harold, concerned for his cousin's sanity, visited Matthew again. During their conversation, Harold revealed that his first wife, Haley, had a son who died from a fatal disease. After the boy's death, Haley claimed she could see her son's ghost, which eventually drove her insane. Harold feared that Matthew was experiencing something similar. The strange occurrences continued. Matthew heard and saw unsettling things, like a woman's voice on the phone saying he couldn't save Claire and a vision of Claire's severed head in a wig parcel. Watching this, he was scared to death, but it wasn't real because it was only a wig. Soon, he realized the entity was playing with him. Now, he was fed up and tried to reach EL for help, but EL didn't answer his calls. One day, Matthew saw that Claire was recovering and able to walk on her own. He was ecstatic, thinking the ritual had worked. But this wasn't Claire, it was an entity from the bag that had taken her form. When Matthew touched her, he felt something was off. Soon, he realized it was the entity, and he started shouting at her. Unfortunately, the real Claire arrived and left, thinking Matthew was yelling at her. Matthew was now living in a nightmare. He couldn't tell which Claire was real and which was the entity. The house was filled with eerie voices and visions. Harold, sensing something was wrong, tried to help, but Matthew's obsession with the bag drove a wedge between them. One night, Matthew received another call from the entity, posing as Claire, telling him he had killed her. When he rushed to Claire's room, he found her bleeding from her wrists. He called for an ambulance, but the voice on the other end was the entity, mocking him. Matthew realized the entity was manipulating him and driving him to the brink of madness. Again, Matthew watched the black-marked girl and decided to chase her. While chasing, he reached the bag and saw the bag. As a result, he broke the rule, and in the bag, a hand appeared, pleading with him to save her. She started shouting at him, and Matthew also shouted at her and ran away. Another day, Claire went to watch the studio, and Matthew understood that his wife was getting cured. Suddenly, his attention was diverted by a call from Gwen, who revealed that his wife was going to die. Meanwhile, Claire moved towards the bag. Watching this, she lost consciousness. Matthew picked her up and took her to the bedroom. Desperate to end the nightmare, Matthew decided to get rid of the bag. He messaged EL, telling him he was going to burn it. But as he tried to remove it from the house, it was too heavy to move. Matthew realized that breaking the ritual's rules had severe consequences. Desperate, Matthew decided to confront EL again. He went to the bar where he had first met EL, but no one knew him there. Lily, the bartender, helped Matthew find Elle's address. When he arrived at Elle's house, he was shocked to find the same strange girl he had seen in his visions. This girl was Elle's daughter, Peggy. EL explained that after the ritual, the entity spreads like a virus, infecting everything in the house. After performing the ritual, his daughter had returned, but she was not the same. She was possessed by the entity, which now controlled her. EL revealed that the only way to stop the entity was to put someone else through the ritual, transferring the curse to them. This horrifying revelation left Matthew with a terrible choice: pass the curse to someone else or continue to suffer its torment. Returning home, Matthew found Harold waiting for him. Harold disclosed that Claire had died. In a desperate attempt to end the nightmare, Matthew put Claire's body in the bag, hoping it would somehow bring her back. But instead, the entity emerged, taking Harold's life and leaving Matthew alone with his guilt and horror. When Matthew reached Claire, she poured black liquid into his mouth. Matthew, now completely under the entity's control, pretended everything was normal. When Gwen visited to check on Claire, Matthew let her in, knowing the entity would kill her. The entity, taking Gwen's form, attacked and killed her, replacing her with a new version of Claire. Matthew knew he had to pass the bag to someone else to free himself from the entity's grasp. He chose Lily, the bartender, who was struggling with her mother's illness. He convinced her that the bag would take away all her troubles. Lily, trusting Matthew, took the bag, not knowing the horror it contained. Matthew's plan worked. The entity left his home, transferring the curse to Lily. Claire, or rather the entity posing as Claire, was now with him, fulfilling his wish, but at a terrible cost. The story ends with Matthew and the entity living together, a hollow reflection of his former life. The real Claire was gone, replaced by a sinister force that now controlled their lives. Matthew's desperate attempt to save his wife had led to unimaginable consequences, and the ancient relic had claimed yet another victim. If you like the movie recap, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel.